Hello and welcome to a very special edition of That Gaming Show. Now, recently we did a piece on piracy and how it affects the local Australian games, film and TV industries. Creative Content Australia has created a campaign to educate the local industry on how piracy affects content. Here's a clip.
I need to talk to you about illegal downloading. New laws have blocked all major pirate sites. As for the rest, well, you can end up with viruses or identity theft. Or you could just spend a few bucks, watch it properly. Think about it.
We are very excited to have two special guests with us today. The head of Creative Content Australia, Lori Flekser.
Hi.
And from Red Bull Gaming, Joab Gilroy.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Hi. So recently, there was some new data that was released by Creative Content Australia at the Screen Forever Screen Producers Association conference recently down in Melbourne. There was some interesting information that came out about the state of piracy in Australia and how it affects the film and TV industry. So, Lori, what were some of the key takeaways from that research?
So this is annual research that Creative Content Australia have been running for around 9 years. So we've been tracking people's attitudes and behaviours online in terms of content theft, screen content, for many years now. So this year what we saw was that we've kind of arrested piracy with adults, which is now sitting consistently at 21%. There's been a slight decline in 12 to 17-year-olds, which is really good news. But it's still quite a serious issue with 1 in 5 Australians still regularly pirating screen and television content. There were a couple of other findings around malware. Pirates are about 3 or 4 times more likely to experience viruses and malware than people who don't pirate. And we know this because international research has shown that about 1 in 3 infringing sites does propagate malware. And the other interesting thing that we tracked was site blocking. So the Price of Piracy campaign with Brian Brown was based on the back of a federal court order to require ISPs to block sites that predominantly provide access to infringing content. And we can see that pirates are coming up against block sites, and in general, many of them are tending to migrate to legal sources. So we can see, and again, mirroring similar research overseas, that site blocking does tend to work.
Yeah. Okay, so within that research, was there any specific genres or categories of film and TV that were more affected than others? Because obviously, and they've been very open about it, HBO saying that Game of Thrones is one of the most highly pirated TV shows, at least in Australia, if not the world. So that falling into a specific kind of, that sci-fi fantasy category. Are there other categories like that which you see more pirated material being affected?
We haven't gone down the genre track to look at that specifically, but you only have to look at the top 10 most pirated films and TV shows every week or every month, and you can see that they are often the bigger blockbuster movies. We know that pirates are predominantly males between the ages of around 17 and 30. So it's often the kind of films and TV programs that they like. But the numbers generally are pretty staggering, with 191 billion visits to infringing sites in 2016. So that wasn't obviously just for film and television. That would have crossed over with music and games and or anything else that you can... There's no need to steal porn anymore, is there?
Is there, Joe?
I guess not,
So we don't have any specific data from the research on the state of games piracy in Australia. There was a European Union Commission report which came out in September, which did have some numbers. And while the numbers for film and TV piracy weren't exactly aligned with your findings, they did say that an average of 51% of all EU adults and 72% of all EU minors illegally downloaded or streamed forms of creative content. So those numbers are absolutely astronomical. But further in that report, they did actually address games specifically, where they said only 18% of respondents admitted to illegally downloading or streaming games. So, Joe, looking at those two figures, that's quite a huge disparity between between those numbers. Why do you think that the games industry and gamers are less inclined to steal games content?
You know, there's obviously a lot of factors that go into, you know, the idea of wanting to steal, pirate, like a piece of entertainment media. But at the end of the day, I think we wind up in this situation where gamers are very well served in, like, you know, they are able to acquire the things they want very quickly without any hassle at a price point that they're happy with generally. And so that they don't have any reason to feel the need to pirate. And so I think in a lot of cases we wind up in this situation. You know, I think it was like 2012 or 2011 or something like that. Gabe Newell, who is the head of Valve, they run Steam. Steam's a massive digital distribution platform. He told, I think it was the Cambridge Student, a student newspaper, that in an interview that at its core, piracy was a service issue, that they were told that entering the Russian market would wind up, you know, ruining them, that they'd never make any money, that they wouldn't be able to sell to Russians because, you know, Russians just pirate everything. And within the space of 6 months, Russia was one of their largest markets. Like after opening in Russia, it was one of the largest markets because it was an underserved community that desperately wanted to play games, that desperately wanted to buy games, and yeah, they suddenly had an avenue to make that happen. I think that is the overarching sort of link that is there between games and piracy and those lower numbers.
Yeah.
And we've clearly seen a decline in piracy as film and television has become more readily available, but it's kind of stagnated. And even in countries where all services exist, for example, the US, people are still pirating movie and television content. And I think the distribution models are very, very different. Obviously, with games, the idea is that they go out online in the first instance and they earn their money by people buying it online. Film is still very dependent on a cinema audience and the revenue that comes from cinema, and increasingly so because the long tail that used to exist, you know, the films used to make more from physical sales and rentals than they did from cinema, and that's no longer the case. Really, the major amount of revenue is now from cinemas, and if you don't have that, you can't make up those enormous budgets, you know, 30, 50, 100 or $200 million plus the marketing costs. You can't make that up via subscription services, which are kind of all you can eat for $10 or $12 a month. It's just simply not possible. So people often talk about convenience in terms of accessing film and television content versus accessing whatever else. But it's very easy when you're an infringing service to pretty much provide everything because you're not licensing or buying any content. So you can provide everything at no cost, and whatever income you make is profit. For a legitimate service, they can't buy everything, they can't license everything. Not all audiences in all countries want to watch everything, so why would you license a small Norwegian comedy for, you know, for Australia or for
I don't know.
Chile?
I like Norseman. I think that's going well on Netflix. No, it's interesting that you say that because I think in a lot of cases we wind up in a situation. I think the site blocking efforts in themselves demonstrate that in a lot of ways, you know, anti-piracy advocates understand that it is a servicing issue because all site blocking is really doing is making it as hard to get pirated, you know, media as it is to get, you know, legitimate. And so it's really just leveling the playing field, but it's leveling the playing field in sort of, you know,
Constantly playing catch up.
Yeah, and making things worse for everyone in a way, you know, instead of making things better, which is, I mean, obviously the cinema market is critical to film, but at the same time, you know, I think with TV in particular, that's not really an excuse. And by and large, you know, the most pirated thing is TV, right? Game of Thrones is the most pirated thing. And at the end of the day, that is honestly a case of just a group of people who can't get what they want. You know, you go on, you legitimately buy Foxtel now. Like so many people did it and it crashed. On like.
Yeah. That was unfortunate, but you know, those things do happen from time to time. But Foxtel could not have made it easier to get, or cheaper to get Game of Thrones the last season. And still there are people who will find an excuse for not doing it. You know, first they didn't want to pay the big amounts, and then those were reduced. And then it was we didn't want to, sign up to Foxtel because we don't like the owners of Foxtel.
I'm definitely in that camp.
Excuses, no, but excuses are really,
As a subscriber for many years.
Yeah. But I do think about music, and again, when you look at the whole kind of, the wall of excuses that build up around piracy. I mean, music is available on dozens of services for free, and yet about a year or so ago, and I'm not sure of the current stats, but around 1 in 4 downloads of a piece of music was still illegal or infringing. So it usually is around the fact that people just don't want to pay for content. And why would you if it's available for free?
Yeah.
It's one of the problems of
I
the internet.
don't actually think that's the case though, because I wonder how, I wonder if the statistics perhaps aren't tracking enough data. I wonder if, the hottest new album of 2017 comes out today on iTunes. Taylor Swift. No, she's a snake. I wonder if that comes out and it's on iTunes, it's on Apple Music, and so anyone with Apple Music can listen to it. But it takes a day and a bit to come out on Google Play. And I have Google Play, so what am I going to do to listen to Tay Tay? I guess...
Wait a day and a half.
Wait a day and a half. Or, I want to be part of
Sign up to Spotify without paying.
This is what I'm saying, right? I'm not saying I'm actively stealing music on the record. But what I'm saying is, people want to be part of the conversation. The conversation on the internet these days only lasts for a certain amount of time, and we wind up in this situation where everyone's constantly playing catch up. They're trying to keep up, and so as soon as it comes out on the platform that they have already signed up to for 24 months or whatever, they are actually legally. Subscribing or purchasing the material. I mean, music's a nightmare as it is. Most of their revenue now comes from live
events,
live performances. Yeah. That one,
which would be similar to a cinematic experience for film, you would say, right? Because that's that kind of grandiose, optimal. Well, not optimal because the music at a concert isn't as good as what you can listen to at home, but that similar kind of here's the big event, the cinema experience, the concert experience, so you can see how those two things align. So, Lori, looking at the examples we're seeing here, referencing music and looking at what games are doing, do you think the model will change? Do you think there's enough incentive for for what you're seeing in these other content industries for film and TV to adopt some of these strategies?
The model's constantly changing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you only have to look back 5 years and windows were longer and there weren't as many services and the price points were very different. So there is constant motion and adjustment in the industry. And now we're looking at premium VOD coming soon, and cinemas may well have a part of that. So that'll change their reluctance to allow a day and date, because of course there's no guarantee that if films were available immediately online as they were in the cinema, that anyone would ever go to the cinema again. Or just would it be such a small percentage that most cinemas would be forced to close, and then are we ever going to see $200 million films again? Possibly not. So I think things are changing, but legislation is always slow to keep up with technology and changes in the technical world. I mean, people are very nimble, and I think we'll never stamp out people wanting things for free or wanting it like right now and not being able to get it just the way that they are legitimately getting other content. In the same way as we can't eliminate drink driving or littering and all of those things, but we can minimise it to a point where it's not such a huge impact on the industry. Because right now, it is having a major impact. And while people don't always see that because it feels like content is ubiquitous, there's a very strong swing in the industry towards safer, less risk-averse decisions about funding. Investors are hard to come by, certainly for the Australian film industry. It's incredibly hard to convince somebody to put money into a film that's likely to have 1 in 5 sales decimated by piracy. So those are all of the things downstream that perhaps the average consumer doesn't see, but that are really influencing the way in which decisions are made about making film and television content.
But have we not reached a point yet where, you know, you account for, the Walmart accounts for people stealing all their stuff all the time. You know, they account for this much shoplifting, et cetera, et cetera. Have we not reached a point yet where combating piracy is like, I don't know, bailing out the Titanic with a thimble? Like, is it not just weathering a storm that is never going to end? Why attack it from that angle? Why attack it from the angle that, you know, obviously it's illegal. It's definitely illegal. I don't think anyone questions that it's illegal, but why?
So because the main issue is money getting back to the content creators, right? That's what needs to. That's where the money is being taken from. Every time a piece of content's stolen, the people who made it are the ones that suffer. So instead of spending money on fighting the pirates, like why not distribute that money into the content creators? Is that what you're saying?
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Look at you go, Beau. No, what I'm saying is more a case of, you know, let's say there's a best case scenario for, you know, people are just going to pirate whatever. You know, we come to accept that 10% of all people just aren't going to buy stuff, right? Unless
you're not going to be able to convince them either way.
So, you know, a campaign with Brian Brown, is that going to change their mind? Is it like, well, who's the target audience? I guess is the question. You know, who are you trying to get through to with a campaign where you're talking to?
Okay, so in that particular instance, we were talking to people who may not have heard of site blocking, which was a fairly reasonable percentage of the population, to really warn them that what's left is proxies and mirrors, which may not be the Pirate Bay anymore. It may well be some site that is actually earning money from the malware it distributes to every single person who clicks there, because that is one of the revenue sources for a lot of infringing sites. We were talking to parents about what potentially their kids might be coming up against online, and reminding people that it's actually not so hard to pay for content these days. So I think we have to be vigilant, and I think we have to keep educating people, because I think what we're seeing, particularly amongst young people, is an entire generation of digital natives growing up who just are not accustomed to paying for things online. And that's a real problem for the industry generally. And newspapers are facing that now. They've given away news for so long, and now they're trying to work out how to run a business when people just are not used to paying to buy news anymore.
You're getting it for free.
You absolutely do not want to get to that point in the film and television industry or the games industry or any industry, because you can't. There's no reason why people shouldn't be. You know, there's always been a social compact that people pay for the things that they want to consume, and even though it's a digital file, you consume a film or TV program when you watch it. That's the eating of the apple, in a way. So you can't say nobody, just a digital file and they didn't lose a sale because I wouldn't have paid for it anyway, and all of those excuses. You've actually consumed that product. But if you keep doing that without ever needing to actually put your credit card numbers in, how are we going to change those behaviours? And then how do you run an industry? How do people actually earn a living?
Yeah, I know. Look, I totally agree. I mean, I write online, so I'm well aware of the challenges that we're all internet-based creative people are facing at the moment. But I honestly wonder if there's not more to be gained by pivoting away from just accepting that you can't really fight this storm, and you're better off simply providing them with a viable alternative where they will ultimately just get what they want. I mean, like if I want to watch Game of Thrones, I'm not subscribing to Foxtel. I have a proxy wherein I've subscribed to HBO Go, and so I can watch anything on HBO. But that's knocked down every other week. My US Netflix is knocked down every other month. It's like I am fighting to pay for this content. It's like I'm trying so hard to give my money away, and
I think to their credit, I think it was season 2 where HBO actually made the entire season of Game of Thrones available on iTunes for $30 or something, and I bought that, even though I'm a subscriber to Foxtel. I bought that the whole season, watched them as they came out. It was fantastic. They did it for one season, then cancelled. It was like, what are you doing? This is fantastic. Why'd you cancel it? But yeah,
and that's the decision not of Foxtel or anyone in Australia.
Yeah.
How it's released
Yeah.
here is the decision of the people who make the program, and they should have the right to decide
Yeah.
how their program is monetised and where it's shown. It's not. You know, the same as any Australian filmmaker who makes a film has the right to choose. You know, if you want to put it out on BitTorrents, you know, so be it. That's your decision. But if it's not, the right of monetisation and distribution of content should not be in the hands of the public, really. It should be in the hands of the people who have put in the many, many years of hard work and sweat, and the people who've put in the money and taken the risk to make that.
Yeah. And hone their craft and build something that's in demand. Like that's, you know, the nature of commerce everywhere is you've created something that's in demand, you should be compensated for that demand, creating that demand.
I just, you know, I don't think, like, again, you know, I don't think anyone, well, no, definitely people think, you know, they should get everything for free. There is a strain of entitlement throughout some people, absolutely, 100%. But I don't think that it's a question of who has the right to distribute these things, who has the right to give the stuff away. Ultimately, the stuff exists, and people are just going to take it. It's more a case of accepting and attempting to minimise that impact. Is like
You're not going to change human behaviour because there's always going to be that element who will take it. So yeah.
That's my theory. Is you know that ultimately, you can't stop.
I think it's I think it's something that we have to continue to police and monitor for many reasons. One is because it actually has a real impact on the kind of content and the amount of content that's being made and the livelihoods of tens of thousands of, let's just say, Australians right now. It's not about the Tom Cruises and Nicole Kidmans of the world and paying them. It really is about the grips, gaffers, caterers, truck drivers, etc., who rely on in a freelance industry, rely on a continuum of work to make sure that they can live. And it's about, in each country, and particularly ours, telling our own stories as well. So I think you need to be vigilant all the time. I think there are always going to be people, as I said, you're never going to cut it out completely, but you have to not normalise it.
Sure.
But I think
what's a
pirates are
percentage, in
nimble
your
as
opinion?
well.
What's a percentage that would be
don't know.
like
I
not
don't
acceptable?
know.
Obviously
I
not
honestly
acceptable.
don't
But
know.
like
You know, that would be a financial, commercial decision by the people who are putting most at risk in terms of financing these films. But pirates are incredibly nimble, and let's be absolutely clear: these are not boys in a basement swapping files. These are often crime syndicates who are profiting from content that they've not put a cent into making, but they're making money by advertising on those sites or by infecting, literally, what they're calling drive-by downloads, where you just open the site and they are getting paid for everyone's computer who's infected by some form of malware. Ransomware, we know, is just growing exponentially. I mean, we know that infringing sites are the key way for propagating malware on the internet. We know it from international. So I think we have to be vigilant. We have to protect consumers from this. We can't normalise the behaviour. We have to make sure that people are educated that there is an impact, and the impact is not just Hollywood producers and stars. It's a broader impact than that. I think we have to watch out for new forms of piracy like set-top boxes, which we can talk about. But yes, there's a whole new growing form in which people are accessing content where they're actually cutting off subscriptions because it's so easily available through apps, illegal apps on set-top boxes. And I think we have to continue to legislate to protect copyright, and we have to educate people about how important copyright is.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point for us to finish on. It is always going to be a fight that's going to be hard to win. It's human behaviour that we've seen within the statistics, that there will be people out there that take whatever they can get access to. As Lori said, it's something that we will need to keep fighting against because it does affect so many people. And I think that's the one key takeaway that we can have here. when content's being made, there are a lot of people that put a lot of effort into bringing that content to life. And it's one thing that we should be thinking about every time that we access or know of people that are taking this content for free and not compensating the people that create that content. Think of all the different professions and lives that are affected by these kind of activities. Something that I always think about when these things happen is when your favourite show is discontinued or cancelled. Think about why that happens. It happens because the show's not making money.
And that can be for a wide array of reasons, but at the end of the day, that is a lot of, it's a large employment stream, a lot of people out of work or moving on to new things that are affected. And if the money goes away, then the shows go away.
Yeah. So think about that when you're consuming content. Content can be funded by ads, so watch the ads. Content can be funded by subscriptions, so pay the subscriptions. The content that you love is made by this funding, so keep that in mind. We don't have any ads on that gaming show, so if you would like to contribute to our Kickstarter, no, we don't have a Kickstarter, but yeah, so it's just that one of the key takeaways we'd like to make sure that we take away from today's session. So I'd really like to thank our special guests for coming in and spending some time with us today. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Joab.
No problem.
And stay tuned for that gaming show, which goes live every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. We'd love to see you next time. Jump in, ask us a question, and if you've got any comments about this show, pop them in the comments below.